Hi there, welcome to RS DesignSpark, and today we're going to be talking about terminal marking. And I have Clive Humphrey from Vargo. Hi, Clive. Do you want to say hello to DesignSpark?
Hi, hello, DesignSpark. Hello, everybody. My name's Clive Humphrey. I'm a product manager at Vargo. I've been a product manager for our interconnection range for, probably 15 years now. So it's fair to say I've got quite a bit of experience of what Vargo can offer, our solutions, and how we can be used in so many different applications.
Fantastic. Well, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time out today, Clive, to join us. We're going to be touching on a subject which is close to my heart, the world of industrial automation and panels and cabinet control. Now, there is one thing that I always think is sometimes is overlooked, but it's one of the essentials in good practice, and that is terminal marking, for example. Sometimes it's treated as an afterthought, but I'm just wondering from your experience, what is it, why is it such an essential?
You're right. It is often treated as an afterthought, and it's something that people building panels and control cabinets think of at the last minute when they realise they're coming to wire the cabinet, wire the components, identify the components. And it's really important that not only the conductors themselves, the wires, but also the components are clearly identified. Not identifying things can lead to errors. It can make maintenance and commissioning much more difficult when you're trying to trace a circuit and you can't identify how the things are connected.
Yeah, and I think also I can see over your shoulder that you've got a cabinet that looks very well laid out. And one of the things I always think about, and I've seen quite a few cabinets in my time where I look at them, and my first thought is that the person who installed this hasn't given any afterthought to the next person that might actually open that cabinet door.
Yes.
So in terms of things like durability and standard compliant, but also things like safety features and speeding up installation and maintenance, can you just touch on those for us and why, that kind of cabinet layout that I see over your shoulder does make a big difference?
It's you're right. Having the proper clear labeling is a real help to installation, as you've already said, maintenance, particularly if there is a problem and wiring needs to be chased round, then you need to be able to clearly identify each end of the cable and clearly identify the components. Working from a schematic, components will be identified on the schematic by a number through the CAE system where the circuit was designed. So it's important that numbering is duplicated within the cabinet itself. Safety is important too, as you've already highlighted. If a part needs to be changed, it's important that the right part is identified. And this is where the marking and the labeling of the cables, the components, and also naming any particular areas to identify there might be some particular high voltage or parts operating at a different current that need to be clearly identified to be shown that they need perhaps to be treated differently.
Absolutely. And I think also as well, there's a lot of OEMs who are making cabinet and control panels for additional users, and to present something which is so clearly marked also then leads on for, like you say, ongoing maintenance. But in terms of reducing cost, purely just by having a cabinet which is marked clearly and concisely, that saves a lot of time and takes a lot of the heartache out of tracing, cable to connector, etc.
Yes. If you can identify it clearly, then that's going to reduce the amount of time it takes to affect any repairs. It's going to reduce the downtime on the equipment. So the end user is going to get better use out of their equipment if things are clearly marked and labeled.
Yeah. And one of the products, obviously, from Vargo is the Smart Printer Starter Kit that you can talk to us about, designed specifically around control cabinet marking. And the great thing about this, it's a portable device as well, so you can take it with you. But also, when you're designing and commissioning cabinets for other users, then you can actually, use this smart printer kit to your heart's extent. Do you want to just talk us through a little bit more about the kit?
Certainly, I have one. This is the Vargo Smart Printer. So as you can see, it's compact, it's lightweight, and it's a thermal printer. So maintenance is really minimum. It's just a case really of cleaning the print head on a weekly basis. So it's easy to use. The media actually feeds in. There's a slot in the back there where the media feeds in. The media is supplied on a reel. And then you all simply need to make sure that the print head is in the right, the sensor is in the right place and the material is fed through properly. The marking itself you will have designed using Vargo Smart Script software. And then there's so many different types of media that can be printed. A little sample book, really good because it actually has the markers stuck into it. So you can see markers for the terminals on different types of cable marking, heat shrink as well. I might go past the heat shrink page now. So this is cable marking that the conductor feeds through. This is the heat shrink, available in different sizes. So you print it through on the printer, and then you thread the cable through and shrink it on. So it's a permanent marking of the conductors. So many other different types. This is one that laminates itself. Here's one markers that can be cable tied on. And then when it comes to the device marking, a marking strip can be used to identify products within a cabinet. And then various different types of self-adhesive markers. This one is particularly good if you've got a length of trunking. You can print out marking and stick that on the trunking to identify the products around it. Different types of labels, pages and pages of labels. Self-adhesive type. This is one that could be used on an end stop to identify what a section of terminals or are being used for. And a bit larger labels, the sort of thing that I would call a rating plate, where you can put logo and serial number and production details on that to identify a panel, and also push button markers as well. So a complete range of markers that can be printed using the compact Vargo Smart Printer. And you're right in what you said, it is portable. It can be used in a production type environment, or this one's got a dongle in the back, so you can actually use it wirelessly using an app on your phone to print marking on site. So if it's a maintenance or some extra products are just being added onto a panel, then that marking can be done remotely by the panel without having to take that back to the factory or print marking in the factory.
Yeah, that's that unit. In terms of the different types of marking that it can achieve, that is very, very versatile. But one of the things, as you were showing the markings, it just brings out to me things around the best practice for marking within control cabinets. So ultimately these cabinets are going to be used in industry. So you've got things like heat, abrasion, moisture, that type of thing, durability, legibility, and color coding. All of those help within the best practice. And I just wondered if you wanted to expand on those, for example.
It's a thermal printer, and the ink on the ribbon is highly durable. The last thing you want in a control cabinet or on a panel is marking that fades, is marking that scratches off, or if in a warm environment, marking that could easily be smudged. So it's important to have a really durable printing method, which is exactly what we've got here. It's different different people contacting onto the panel, so it would be easy perhaps for somebody to accidentally smudge or scratch something, but that
Yeah.
wouldn't happen with a Vargo Smart Printer. Legibility is also really important. The marking needs to be really clear, not try and get too much marking onto one label. Choose a suitably sized label, but also make sure the marking is as large as possible to clearly identify. Particularly, I mean, in this one here, it was great because I'm in a nice, well lit room. But if I was in a darker room or in a factory environment, I really need to make sure that the marking is as easy as possible to be seen in all environments and all possibilities. Color coding thing. The Vargo Smart Printer will print in black ink or red ink. And in our experience, those really are the only two important colours. Red might be used to identify a hazard of some sort, but the contrast between the background colour of the marker and the printing is important to make sure that it's as clear as possible.
And we've all probably got in our house labels on electrical equipment, which has certainly faded, but in the industrial environment, it becomes ever more concerning if you see labels which over time have deteriorated. So in terms of common mistakes, I'm always saying about, you need to make sure that, first of all, your marketing is going to have to be robust. Don't use handwritten labels, but also, the consistency has to be the same across all of the things within the panel that you're marking. So don't use anything like unclear symbols. But then also, in non-critical areas, it's still important to mark. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. Just going back to something you said a moment there about not using handwritten labels, I'm still surprised at the number of OEMs, panel builders that do use handwritten labels. And then that relies on the legibility of the handwriting, and that sort of marking is more likely to fade. And I can understand, just as a very being used very briefly, but a permanent marking should never be handwritten. It won't last. It won't be clearly legible. So, as we said right at the very beginning, rather than leaving the marking as an afterthought, it should be considered as part of the planning process. How are we going to clearly mark our panel? How are we going to clearly identify the components and conductors within it? Consistency, as you said, also important. Making sure that the same marking type is used throughout, and the legibility of the fonts and the scripts that are being used, and making sure that symbols that are used are well-known ones rather than anything that, okay, I'll design my own little symbol to identify that. And importantly, as you said, making sure the whole of the panel is marked clearly. Just because a part is not so critical, when the panel's being built, you don't know how it's going to be used later on down the line from a maintenance point of view. So don't skimp on the marking, thinking that you're going to be saving a bit of time or a bit of cost. It's much better to be able to mark it thoroughly and completely.
Yeah, interesting to hear what you were saying about the legibility of handwriting from person to person. That comes to mind, particularly when I'm looking at passwords for any of my kind of encrypted devices. And I always get confused even if I've written the password on a piece of paper between the symbol for an S and the number 5, or a 1 and an I. Yeah. And it's like, this is why we should write, to be very legible. But obviously with this printer, do you take away any of that kind of confused, is it a 5, is it an S, is it a 1, is it an I, that type of thing? Yeah
Because the marking on the panel in the cabinet is consistent, so you can see immediately the differences.
And I just want to maybe mention a couple of things on good versus bad. So for example, Clive, I mentioned the panel behind you. To me, that's a perfect definition of something which is very clear, it's uncluttered, it's well marked, Have you ever seen any really bad examples within the industry that you'd like to maybe call out or recall for your experience?
The bad examples that I've seen tend to be panels that are either not marked at all. So you look and you think, right, it's maybe the cables are numbered, but the devices themselves are not. So you think, well, if I'm tracing that cable, how am I going to know whether that's the proper device it's connected to?
Yeah.
So as we've mentioned already, places where the marking has been neglected in some areas. And the second one I'd say is older panels that have been in situation for a long time. I visited a customer some weeks ago in their factory, and it was a very dusty sort of environment. Opened a panel and it got dust and dirt in it, and you really couldn't identify some of the marking. You wanted to try and clean it to be able to see it, and you shouldn't have to do that. It should be immediately visible to you. So, and that's, as we've said already, it's going to save time and ultimately going to save money to have everything clearly visible just as soon as possible.
I think that's an important consideration to make, save time and money, because, let's be honest, those control cabinets are, the heartbeat of your business. They're controlling your infrastructure. So, for example, if you're, a distributor and you've got control conveyor systems and the panel goes down, it's really in your kind of it's really in your favor if your panel was so well marked that the maintenance crew can come in, see where the problem is, it's marked clearly, they can get the job done super quick, and you're up and running again. So I just want to, in closing, Clive, if you would highlight some more of the benefits that this smart printer is actually going to help, with those marking standards, the quickness and the efficiency that you guys have got with that smart printer kit.
I'm just going to pick up on something you said there and start with that. If in that example that you gave, a panel goes down, so the maintenance team need to come in, they might need to replace a piece of equipment, a device within the panel. So because the Vargo smart printer is portable, then that new device can easily be marked. You can use the software, the smart script software on the mobile, and print the marking needed for the new device. If wiring has needed to be changed to incorporate perhaps a different style of device, then the wire marking can also be printed on the same printer. So it's in that sort of on-site example, then this is a real bonus, a real asset. Using this sort of printer in a production environment, we have a couple of these printers, and we have dedicated printers for different types of media. That's because we use particular media more often. But the media is very easy to change. So if you're going from terminal markers to wire markers, it's easy to set up, and the designs are stored within the smart script software, so they can easily be recalled, pre-printed again, or modified if necessary. As I said already, it's a thermal printer, so very little maintenance needed. And the benefit of a small printer that can be used with so many different types of media is it really brings the control panel to life. Identifies the parts clearly, meaning, as we've said already, maintenance time is reduced, and installation time is reduced because the things of products in there are really clearly identified.
Yeah. I think in terms of the benefits which you've shown with this smart printer, that they are a lot to be desired in there. And just before we finish, I just want to make one observation that it was just through the course of this conversation, I'm thinking back to, I go to a lot of the trade exhibitions, and I stand on a lot of displays where suppliers are showing their wares, and ultimately there's a couple of control cabinets on the stands. But to be honest with you, the marking is vacant. There's nothing there because they've built them for their demonstrations. They know exactly how everything works. And I'm thinking, actually, there's a case for this even, at those clean events, like the trade shows, because countless of times I've seen control cabinets running motors, for example, which have no marking. You've got your PLCs, your inverters in there, and there's no marking at all. So yeah, it's
You
food
could
for
even
thought.
use the marking, you could even use marking in that sort of trade environment. You could even use marking just to identify, to say, hey, this is a relay type. This is a
Yeah.
type of terminals. This power supply has this output and this voltage and current. So you could use the marking in that environment, not to necessarily identify individual um, wire numbers, but as a way of adding extra detail to the product that you're displaying. And
Yeah.
we've done that ourselves when we've produced cabinets that we would show on exhibition stands. This one behind is actually a fully functioning cabinet, and so everything is properly identified as it would be in a panel that was used in the factory.
Fantastic. Clive, I think we started the conversation saying that it was an area which sometimes can be overlooked. I'm hoping by the end of the conversation that the viewers understand why, it is really important to have clear, legible, durable marking. So thanks for joining us on DesignSpark today, and I hope we can talk to you again sometime soon.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And like I say, I hope it's helped to open some people's ideas to what's possible and why marking is so important. So thank you very much.